Hello readers, today I'm going to be talking about text features, which is to say the parts of a text that aren't just words. So what's a good example of a text feature? Well, let's start with, say, a map. Maps are a great example of a feature of the text that isn't made up of words. So this is a social studies textbook. This section is about Egypt. I've turned to this page where there is a map. What is this map of? Well, we can look at this part here. This text here over on the side is a caption. It's something that can tell us about an image. And the map is labeled, so it's about the Nile and how the Nile is fed from rainfall to the south, the water travels north, here's Egypt up here. Don't focus too much on the details of this being about the Nile and stuff. Really what we're talking about is here is an image, there is a caption next to the image. Reading the caption helps us understand what's in the image, and looking at the image helps us understand what's in the caption. It's also useful when you're looking at a map to see when the map is from, if the map has a date associated with it in any way. This one doesn't visibly have a date associated with it, but if you look very closely, you can see in dotted red the outlines of modern day countries. And those countries wouldn't have been around 5,000 years ago in ancient Egypt when this map is about. Not super relevant here, but it does sort of help you figure out where in the world this map is supposed to be. There's also this projection over on the right that says, okay, here's the continent of Africa, here's this little red swatch, and that shows that this is sort of a zoomed in portion of this map of Africa. So we've got maps, we've got images, and that can be illustrations, photos, blueprints, anything really. And if we go back to our social studies textbook, we can see here there's this image. And just looking at the image on its own, we might not be able to tell what that is exactly. But again, there is another helpful little caption over to the side that says this is an aerial view of the Nile. So now we know what this is. And that can help ground us as we go through the rest of the text, which is also, I assume, about the Nile River and ancient Egypt. The caption and its picture are two halves of a whole. They're both helping you understand the other. Other useful text features include charts, diagrams, and graphs, which can include things like timelines. This page here has a table. You can see up at the top, this top row is labeled Ancient Egypt, and then on the left we have all the different periods of Egyptian history, and on the right, all the dates associated with those periods. There's also a timeline in this lesson, and this one has a bunch of different text elements, right? So we have, it's not a traditional looking timeline, but you can see that it's arranged from top to bottom, oldest to most recent. So 2950 BCE, before the Common Era, is before 1473 BCE. So this is a list of Egyptian pharaohs. We have an image or a sculpture of the pharaoh, and that image has a little caption over here on the left, and then the name of the pharaoh, and then what's known about each of them. In the case of Narmer, not much, apparently. So for each entry, we have the name up here, we have their image, that image has a caption, and then over on the right, we have all the bullet points of the things that these pharaohs accomplished during their lives. The final text feature I want to talk about is a broader category and something I'll just call layout, and that's the way that the text looks, that the words themselves look. Looking at this page, we can see that the words are grouped in a bunch of different chunks. You know, we have this title up here, Session 2, Building Background Knowledge, The Gift of the Nile, and these are all different kinds of titles and headings, and they give you, the reader, a sense of what this section's going to be about. Up here along the top, these words in orange red, this is something that this book in particular is doing, which is identifying the vocab words that the authors want you to learn while you're reading this lesson. Each of these little paragraphs is set apart by topic. So cooperation equals survival. So that's what this paragraph is going to be about. Skimming across the page, you can see that some of the words look different than other words in that they're bigger and darker. And this is called bolding. When you bold a typeface, it makes the word really stand out. And in this case, the authors are saying, value. That's a word we want you to learn. It's so important, in fact, we've put it at the very top of the page, along with these other words like order, proposal, etc. And indeed, you can see that throughout the passage, you see the word order, stability, order a couple more times. The authors are making bold those vocabulary words that they want you to learn. There's also this feature down here called Turn and Talk, where the authors are suggesting to you that you turn to a friend or a classmate and discuss what you've just read. You can see, too, there's this little icon of little speech bubbles, like a cartoon, that say, hey, talking should happen here. And the final layout element I want to talk about is located right up here in this first paragraph. If you look very closely at the words, you can see that they're thinner and they're tilted to the side. When you do this to words, it's called italics. It's an italic typeface. And italics can be used to mean a lot of different things. Usually what they're used to do is indicate emphasis when something is important. The way that they're being used here in this introductory passage is kind of, I like to think, like the authors are whispering to you. In this unit, you will debate whether the Pharaoh's actions created enough order and stability to justify their power. Right? It's kind of giving you a heads up about what the rest of this passage is going to be about. That's not the only way to use italics. Bold text and italic text can both be used to indicate whether or not a word or a phrase, or in this case, an entire paragraph, is important. The point is that they're different looking from regular text. And it means that the authors want you to pay attention to that specific word or that specific phrase for a particular reason. Those are just some of the many options that are available to you when you look at a text. Remember that when you're reading a passage, it's not just the words, it's everything on the page. Sometimes I even like to familiarize myself with the charts or the diagrams or the images on the page before I start reading, before I really get down to the business of reading the paragraphs, because that helps me get rooted. It helps me anchor myself in what the text is going to be about. I look at the pictures, I skim the captions just to say, okay, what's going on here? Cool, we're talking about rivers, we're talking about ancient Egypt, I'm ready. And building those skills of readiness and being able to anchor yourself in any text that you encounter is what's going to make you a strong reader. You can learn anything. David out.